Whispers beneath the baobab. The sun had just begun to dip behind the distant hills, casting long golden streaks across the red earth of Mikondo, a quiet village nestled deep in the heart of Tanzania. Roosters had stopped their squabbling. Children were called in. And somewhere near the edge of the village, a solitary baobab tree stood tall, its wide, twisting trunk like an elder frozen mid-dance. In the shadow of that ancient tree lived Iona. At 16, Iona was neither child nor woman, a limbo she resented deeply. She had the sharp wit of her mother, whom she barely remembered, and the stubborn pride of her father, who vanished when she was just a baby. But it was her spirit, wild, thoughtful, and uncontainable, that made her both beloved and feared in the village. She lived with Aunt Jabari, a woman who looked like she was carved from stone and had about the same sense of humor. Aunt Jabari was a weaver, sharp with her tongue and her cane. Discipline before dreams, she would say, usually while whacking Iona's calves for sneaking out to climb mango trees. But Iona's dreams were stubborn. Her favorite place to escape was the baobab tree, which stood proudly behind Aunt Jabari's house like a silent guardian. The villagers called it Mtonzejiji, the watcher of the village. No singing near that tree, Aunt Jabari warned. Especially after dark. It listens. And sometimes, it answers. Of course, no one ever explained what that meant. Which made Iona all the more curious. Full Moon, the song that shouldn't have been sung. One evening, while Aunt Jabari was attending a prayer meeting down the road, Iona sat beneath the baobab tree, her worn school books in her lap. The cool breeze tugged at her braids, and somewhere in the distance, a hyena howled its laughter. She wasn't afraid. Not of hyenas. Not of the dark. And certainly not of some wrinkly old tree. Bored, Iona began to hum. A tune her mother used to sing. A lullaby made of lilting Swahili and wordless melody. The sound curled around the air like smoke. And then, the air shifted. The night fell heavier. The wind stilled. The leaves on the baobab didn't rustle. They shivered. Iona blinked. The breeze returned. She laughed nervously. Come on, it's just a tree. You don't like lullabies. The trunk behind her groaned, was straining like old bones waking up. She turned to look. Nothing. Just the same twisted bark and knotted roots. The same dark hollow near the base. Shaking off the chill in her spine, Iona stood and brushed off her skirt. Too much rice, she muttered and went back inside. That night, the whispers began. New moon, the night of whispers. Iona dreamt of eyes. Hundreds of them. Yellow, glowing, watching her from the dark. She wandered through a misty forest where animals moved sideways and the moon was upside down. A great lion with feathers on its back walked beside her but never spoke. A snake coiled around a tree made of mirrors. And beneath her bare feet, the earth whispered. The pact is broken. The debt must be paid. Iona woke with a scream lodged in her throat, her sheets damp with sweat. Then she saw it. A symbol, glowing faintly, on the center of her palm. It looked like a swirling sun made of vines and fangs. She rubbed it furiously. Nothing. It didn't come off. Herb the Watcher awakens. By morning, the glow had faded. But the mark remained, now like a faint scar. Iona stared at it as she walked to the well, her thoughts tangled like Aunt Jabari's yarn baskets. As she passed the baobab, she froze. There was a small pile of fresh white feathers at the base of the tree. No birds in sight. And a faint burnt smell in the air. She reached down to touch one, and the moment her fingers brushed it, the tree's bark cracked open with a sudden snap, like it was yawning after a long sleep. Iona stumbled back. Okay, not weird at all, she whispered, trying not to hyperventilate. She told herself she was imagining things. That maybe the feathers were from a careless chicken and the tree crack was just old wood stuff. But when she looked down at her palm again, the scar was glowing brighter. Paw print spirits in the shadows. The next few days unraveled like a poorly tied shoelace. She started seeing things. Birds with human eyes. Shadows that lingered too long. A child laughing under the floorboards of her room. And then there were the animal spirits. The lion from her dream appeared again, this time at the edge of the village schoolyard, blinking slowly at her before vanishing. A fox with blue fire for eyes darted past her window at midnight. She began hearing whispers even when she was awake. Always the same voice. The debt must be paid. When Ayana tried to ask Aunt Jabari about the baobab, the older woman turned ice cold. That tree is not for questions. Leave it alone. But I think something's wrong. I think it's awake. Aunt Jabari's lips thinned. You didn't sing to it, did you? Ayana hesitated. The silence was answer enough. You foolish child, her aunt hissed, grabbing a patch of white chalk and muttering a prayer under her breath. You've disturbed it. That tree holds memories older than this village. You cannot wake what has chosen to sleep. Crescent moon the message. That night, Ayana stood before the baobab again. This time, she wasn't humming. She placed her hand on its bark and felt it breathe. A low rumble echoed from deep inside the tree. The branches swayed, though no wind stirred. Suddenly, the bark beneath her fingers peeled back, like a scroll unrolling. And carved into the living wood were words in an ancient tongue, but somehow, she understood them. The pact is broken. The debt must be paid. You are chosen, Ayana of the forgotten bloodline. He is coming. She yanked her hand back. Her palm now burned. The symbol shining like fire. Ayana stumbled away, eyes wide, heart thundering like festival drums. Who is he? She cried into the night. But the tree was silent once more. Cloud with lightning the turning point. The next morning, the entire village woke to find their water pots filled with ash. Cows refused to leave their pens. Chickens pecked at shadows. Babies cried without reason. A small boy claimed he saw a man made of smoke walking through the maize fields. And Ayana. She stood at her window, staring at the mark on her palm, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't sure if she wanted answers. Because something ancient had woken. And it had chosen her, the village that forgot. Mikondo used to be a quiet village. Now, not so much. Cows refused to eat. Goats screamed at their own shadows. Birds flew in spirals and forgot how to land. And Ayana. She was at the center of it all. Seedling, there is no pact. You're imagining things, girl, snapped Elder Mateo, his one good eye fixed suspiciously on Ayana. Dreams mean nothing. But the tree spoke. It showed me something, Ayana insisted. It called me the chosen and said the debt must be paid. The circle of elders shifted uncomfortably in their seats beneath the sacred fig tree. Elder Chela coughed into her scarf. There was never a pact, muttered another. Old stories. Nothing more. But things are happening. The mark on my hand. Do not show us that, one elder backed, actually leaping back a step when Ayana raised her palm. Ayana's voice shook, but she stood tall. Something is coming. I feel it. You all know something, you're just pretending not to. Silence. Even the wind stopped. Then Elder Chela whispered, leave it alone, child. Let sleeping spirits sleep. Mage medium skin tone, Baba Mzuri knows. Ayana's search led her to the edge of the village, where the thorn bushes grew wild and the ground was littered with dry herbs and bones. There, in a hut that smelled of pepper, eucalyptus, and secrets, lived Baba Mzuri, a half-blind herbalist who claimed to once speak with hyenas and never got along with shoes. He was hunched, wrapped in layers of cloth, and always humming to himself. Some said he was mad. Others said he was the last person the spirits tolerated. "I see you've been marked," he said without turning as Iona stepped into his smoky hut. Iona blinked. "How did you?" "I'm old, not dead," he croaked, pouring tea from a pot that may or may not have been moving on its own. "Come, sit. The ancestors are restless." Iona sat. The walls were covered in painted symbols, dried leaves, and masks that seemed to watch her. "My mother," she began, "what do you know about her?" Baba Mzuri sighed and stirred the tea with a feather. "Your mother was the last teller of names. A bridge between this world and the next. She kept the balance, made peace with the shadows, gave names to forgotten spirits so they could rest." Iona's eyes widened. "Then why didn't anyone ever tell me?" "Because when she died," Baba Mzuri said quietly, "the ritual of return was never performed. Her spirit never passed on." Iona felt the weight of those words settle like wet cloth on her chest. "So now I'm cursed?" "No," he said, eyes finally turning to her, one cloudy, one sharp as a hawk's. "Now you're next. Go." The cracks begin to show. The following week was like walking through a dream someone else was having. The crops in Mikondo began wilting overnight, despite the rains. Dogs barked at empty corners. Chickens laid eggs filled with sand. A baby was born with teeth and didn't cry, just stared at the midwife with eyes too old for its tiny face. Iona barely slept. The whispers were louder now, even during the day. And then came the boy. She first saw him outside her window, a child no older than 10, wearing traditional funeral cloth, eyes wide and sad. His mouth was sewn shut with black thread. She screamed. Ran outside. Nothing. But the next day, she saw him again, standing in the schoolyard. Then in the well's reflection. Then behind her, in a mirror that had no business showing anyone but her. The village decides. Fear spreads faster than truth, especially in villages. Whispers about Iona sword like dust devils. She talks to trees. She sings to spirits. She's bringing the darkness. Soon, Aunt Jabari's compound was covered in protective charms. People crossed themselves and muttered prayers when Iona passed. Finally, the village council held a meeting. Not that she was invited, of course. But she listened. From behind a tree. Which felt weirdly poetic. "She's disturbing the balance," said Elder Mateo. "Look at the signs." "Send her to the cave of silence," someone whispered. "Let the spirits judge her." Iona's blood ran cold. The cave of silence was where you sent mad people. Cursed people. Criminals too dangerous for prison but too human to kill. No one returned. Aunt Jabari, to her credit, spoke up. "She's just a child." "No," said Elder Chela. "She's her mother's child." And that was that. Milky Way the farewell. That night, Aunt Jabari sat on Iona's bed, silent for the longest time. "I'm sorry," she said at last. "You knew about the pact?" Iona asked softly. Jabari nodded, not looking at her. "Your mother wanted to tell you when you were older. But she died before she could. And I didn't know how to raise a teller of names. So you tried to raise me as no one." Tears welled in Jabari's eyes. "I only wanted you safe." "Too late for that," Iona whispered, clutching her marked hand. Exile. The next morning, they came for her. Iona stood tall. She wore her mother's old kitenge dress. The mark on her hand gleamed in the sunlight like a brand. She didn't cry. She didn't flinch when they tied the ritual beads around her wrist, the traditional sign of spiritual trial. Baba Mzuri met her eyes as she was led past his hut. He gave her a single nod and said only 2 words. "Remember names." Then she was gone, taking toward the dense forest that hid the entrance to the Cave of Silence, a place whispered about in riddles and warnings. The path narrowed. The trees grew thick. The birds fell silent. And as Iona walked deeper into the unknown, she could feel eyes on her again. Not angry this time. Not evil. Just waiting. The Cave of Silence. Evergreen tree left behind. The forest was thick and wild, a place where trees leaned close like gossiping elders and vines hung low, waiting to trip the careless. Iona walked in silence, escorted by 2 village elders who barely met her eyes. At the edge of the forest, they handed her a cloth-wrapped bundle, dried meat, water, a calabash of salt, and a charm made of bone and thread. "This will protect you," Elder Chela murmured, though she didn't sound convinced. "From what?" Iona asked. But they were already walking away, faster than old bones should allow. Iona turned, alone now, facing the yawning mouth of a rock formation that looked far too much like it wanted to swallow her whole. The Cave of Silence. She exhaled slowly. "All right then. Let's meet the monsters." Candle voices without sound. The cave was dark. Not night dark. Not even power-cut dark. This was primordial soup kind of dark. A darkness that felt like it remembered being born. Her footsteps echoed with a slapping wetness, even though the floor was dry. The air was thick, like breathing secrets. She lit a tiny oil lamp from her bundle and moved forward, hand brushing the cold walls for guidance. Suddenly, a whisper with no voice called around her ears. "Who speaks where the dead remember?" Iona jumped. I am Iona." Silence. Then the walls lit up. Not with fire. But faces, dozens, hundreds, glowing faintly in the stone like memories carved in fog. Old villagers. Spirits. Ghosts of the forgotten. Some looked peaceful. Others, not so much. They didn't speak. But their eyes followed her. "These are those who broke the sacred laws," said a raspy voice. Iona spun around. There, crouched on a rock like a gargoyle-sized cat, was a small boy with bright eyes and an enormous grin. He wore an ancient wrap, patched in wild colors, and his feet didn't quite touch the floor. "Name's Kibwe," he said, picking his nose with flair. "Spirit of mischief, memory, and minor chaos. Welcome to the underwhelming real estate we call the Cave of Silence." Smacking face enter Kibwe. "You're a spirit?" Iona asked, squinting. "Technically. But I'm not haunting anyone," he said. "Well, not today." Iona crossed her arms. "You don't seem cursed." "I was cursed. Got better. Long story. Anyway, you're the cursed one now." "Exciting, huh?" Iona gave him a look. "Can you help me?" He grinned wider. "I'm literally the only one who can." He hopped off the rock and led her deeper. They passed ancient carvings, symbols glowing in colors Iona didn't have names for. They reached a chamber where the wall pulsed like a living heart. In the center, a vast, swirling mirror made of light and stone. "This," said Kibwe, waving grandly, "is the map of the spirit realms. Also known as the plot device." Iona blinked. "The what?" "Never mind. Focus." Word mapped the land of names. Etched into the wall was a landscape of spirit territories, valleys of memory, rivers of grief, forests where time stood still. But near the bottom, half erased and flickering, was a place called the Land of Names. "That's where you need to go," Kibwe said, suddenly serious. "It's where the balance was broken. And where it must be restored. But how do I get there?" "Oh." Kibwe's grin returned. "That's the tricky bit. You must pass 3 tests set by the guardians of memory." "Of course," Iona muttered. "Always with the 3 magical tests." Oh, don't be salty, Kibwe pouted. At least they don't involve lava or quizzes. Fire test 1, the fire of truth. A doorway appeared behind them, arched in twisted roots and fireflies. Kibwe gestured. Ready to face your deepest fear? Iona stared at the door. No, she whispered. Perfect, Kibwe said. That means you're ready. She stepped through. The chamber beyond was empty, save for a cracked mirror standing on its own. As Iona approached, her reflection flickered. Then changed. She was in a hut. Her mother was there, tired, beautiful, and humming that same lullaby Iona used to sing. Iona reached for her, but her hand passed through. She saw her younger self, barely 6, running outside to play while her mother sat alone, clutching her stomach, sweating. Aunt Jabari ran in, panicked. She's gone, she whispered. Iona gasped. She remembered this moment. The day her world changed. The mirror paused. Suddenly, she saw herself, now, standing over her mother's body, only this time, her hands were glowing. Her mark was burning. Her mother stirred, but Iona turned and walked away. She gasped. That didn't happen. The voice echoed. But it could have. You buried your gift with her. Tears streamed down her face. I'm not strong enough, she screamed. Then came her mother's voice. Gentle. Familiar. You were born strong, Iona. The gift only sleeps. But it remembers its name. The mirror shattered. And Iona fell to her knees. Dizzy the aftermath. Kibwe reappeared beside her. You did good, he said softly. I don't feel good. You faced the truth. That's never fun. Now come on. 2 tests left. And trust me, they only get weirder. Iona stood, wiped her eyes, and looked at the swirling map. The land of names was still pulsing. Waiting. Calling. And she was no longer running from it. The land of names. Desert, the desert where time walks backwards. Iona and Kibwe stepped through the final cave portal, blinking against the sudden blaze of sunlight, only, this sun hung low in the east, and the shadows stretched in the wrong direction. They were no longer in the realm of the living. Before them stretched a vast desert, pale blue sand swirling like fog. The sky pulsed. Birds flew backward. Trees bloomed in reverse. I think I'm dizzy, Iona muttered. Yeah, said Kibwe, spinning just for fun. Time's kind of upside down here. Try not to blink too hard or you'll miss a week. She squinted. In the distance, the sun shaped itself into odd monuments, faces without names, doors without walls, and rivers that flowed uphill. This was the threshold, the passage into the land of names. Stay close, Kibwe warned. This place forgets people. What? He tapped his temple. You lose your name here, you lose you. Got it. Iona nodded grimly and followed. I wear the forgotten weight. Where the forgotten weight. Hours, or maybe seconds, later, they arrived at a wide, glowing gate made of woven voices, whispering names Iona didn't recognize. Beyond the gate, the air shimmered with golden mist. They entered the land of names. It was beautiful. And terrifying. The sky looked like flowing ink. The ground hummed beneath her feet. Giant trees with silver leaves whispered forgotten lullabies. Spirits moved without moving, drifting like smoke in clothes of old memory. Iona could feel them looking at her. Not judging. Just remembering. Each spirit wore a name on their skin, etched in light. But some had fading names. Others none at all. They are the forgotten, Kibwe whispered. Those whose stories were never told. Whose names were never passed down. Iona's heart clenched. They don't look angry. No, he said softly. Just, unfinished. Yan the great spirit weaver. In the center of the realm stood a colossal loom, weaving threads made of sound, time, and story. There, seated with hands like wind and eyes like night sky, sat a towering figure cloaked in fabric made of constellations. The great spirit weaver. Her voice was a lullaby and a thunderstorm all at once. Iona of the silent flame. You have come. Iona bowed, instinctively. The weaver reached down and touched her glowing hand. You carry the mark of the oathmakers. Your family once protected the boundary between worlds. In exchange, the spirits gifted wisdom, healing, song. Iona's eyes widened. Then what went wrong? Fire the truth that burned. The weaver raised the thread, red, frayed, and tangled. Your mother died suddenly. The village feared her death would unbalance the pact. Her sister, your aunt, chose to hide the truth. The ritual of return was never completed. And so, the pact unraveled. Iona felt a knot twist in her chest. So Jabari, she lied to protect herself. She feared the burden. But her silence echoed into you. And now, the spirits demand resolution. The weaver stepped back. You must choose. Return to the living world. Complete the ancestral ritual. Restore the balance. Or stay here. Live among the remembered. Safe, ageless, but slowly forgotten by the living. Kibwe looked up at her, unusually serious. Not an easy choice. Trust me, I picked wrong ones. Iona closed her eyes. The village had feared her. Her aunt had betrayed her. Her own powers frightened her. But her mother's voice echoed still. You were born strong. The gift only sleeps. She opened her eyes. I want to return. The weaver nodded. Then remember this, names are not just for calling. They are for honoring. Do not forget yours. She placed a golden thread into Iona's hand. It burned like hope. When face a rift opens. The air split like paper. A golden doorway appeared, surrounded by fireflies that sang in tongues Iona didn't understand, but somehow, felt. Kibwe hovered at the edge. I can't follow, he said. Iona's heart sank. What happens to you? He smiled sadly. I've been remembered enough. It's your turn now. She hugged him tight. You're not so bad. For a mischievous ghost goblin. He gasped. You do love me. She stepped into the light. Globe showing Europe Africa the return. Iona awoke in the forest. The mark on her hand now paused gently, no longer glowing but still warm. The wind stirred. The baobab tree, yes, she could see it from here, was waiting. So were the ancestors. So was the death. But now, Iona knew her name. And more importantly, she knew its power, the ritual of roots. Tornado, a village on the edge. When Iona stepped out of the forest, she hardly recognized Mikondo. The once vibrant village looked like a shadow of itself, dry fields, coughing children, cracked earth that groaned beneath each step. The baobab tree behind her aunt's house stood silent, its leaves shivered like old skin. The spirits had not waited patiently. People no longer whispered about Iona. They stared. Some with hope. Some with fear. Aunt Jabari stood on the porch, older somehow. Tired. Eyes rimmed red. Iona, she breathed, as if her niece were a dream she wasn't sure had come true. Iona said nothing. Not yet. Paw prints the return of Kibwe, because of course. That night, a familiar voice popped up by her ear. Miss me. Iona turned, unsurprised to see Kibwe, now glowing faintly, flickering like a stubborn lantern. Weren't you supposed to stay behind? She asked. Technically, I was remembered into existence, he said, spinning. You dragged my name back with you. Lucky me. Iona smirked. I could have left you there. You should have, he winked. But you're sentimental. They both turned to the baobab. It's time, isn't it? Iona said. Kibwe nodded. The ancestors are waiting. But you'll need 3 things before the ritual can begin. The sacred items. Together, they gathered the final elements. The leaf of truth, a rare silver-veined leaf that only grew on the hill of listening, a place where no lie could be spoken. Iona climbed the hill at dawn and plucked it under the gaze of a hawk spirit. The voice of the past, stored in an old flute once played by Iona's grandfather, hidden in a hollow gourd buried beneath her mother's grave. She dug it out with trembling hands. The salt of memory, harvested from a sacred spring that only flowed once every 10 years. Iona found it trickling faintly in the roots of the baobab, guarded by silent toads with eyes that blinked in rhythm. Each item pulsed with magic. Each carried the weight of those who came before. Balance scaled the hardest part. Only one step remained, forgiveness. Aunt Jabari knelt in the sand, ashamed. I didn't know how to raise you, she whispered. Your mother's death, it broke me. I buried the truth to protect you. But I see now, I buried you with it. Iona stared at her. This was the woman who had silenced her legacy. But also the woman who fed her, clothed her, scolded her, and, despite her fear, loved her. Iona reached out her hand. You didn't protect me, she said. But I can still protect the village. Her aunt took the hand, weeping. Cyclone the ritual of roots. The villagers gathered as Iona stood beneath the baobab tree, dressed in her mother's ceremonial cloth. The mark on her palm now glowed steadily, the last ember of an ancient fire. She placed the leaf of truth at the base of the tree, poured the salt of memory into the soil, and blew softly into the voice of the past. The air shimmered. She began to dance. Not the dances she'd learned from village festivals, but the dance that came from somewhere deeper. Instinctual. Ancestral. Powerful. With each step, the air thickened. A hum rose from the earth. The tree pulsed with light. Iona's eyes rolled back. She fell into a trance. At the spirit vision. She was surrounded. Her ancestors stood in a circle, glowing forms wrapped in starfire and memory. Her mother stood in the center, smiling, proud. You've awakened the line, she said. You carry us forward. Iona reached out, but the vision began to fade. The ancestors raised their hands in blessing. Iona whispered, I remember you. Then the baobab's trunk cracked, not breaking, but opening. A final gift. Iona stepped out of the trance, her body still swaying. She dropped the leaf into the opening and whispered, let this truth root deep. The tree closed. The wind rose. Cloud with rain restoration. The symbol on Iona's palm faded, no longer glowing, but still there, like a scar that had finally healed. Then the sky opened. Rain fell. For the first time in months, the village breathed. Crops soaked it up greedily. Children danced barefoot. Elders wept openly. As for the spirits, they left. Not with anger. Not with sorrow. But with peace. Cristobal, the new teller of names. Weeks passed. The land healed. And so did Iona. She became known as the teller of names, keeper of stories, speaker of truth, bridge between worlds. People came to her for guidance. For wisdom. For forgiveness. Even the elders bowed their heads now. Aunt Jabari. She tended the garden behind the house, leaving offerings by the baobab every week. And every evening, Iona would sing softly, not to awaken, but to honor. Because she knew now. The past may sleep, but it always remembers. The end.